In this video, we're going to debunk 3 of the most popular fitness and health cults. Here's what you can expect to learn. First, we're going to give a definition of what is a fitness and health cult. Then, we'll identify the 3 most common ones out there, and might you be in one? I'm actually going to give you a test that you can evaluate whether you are actually in a cult or not. It's one thing to have these beliefs, it's another thing to be in a cult. So let's jump in. Before we do, by the way, my name is Igor. I am the author of 13 books on exercise and nutrition, including 4 Amazon bestsellers. As well, I've been a personal trainer since 2006, and I've been training other trainers in my methodology by speaking at personal training conferences since 2013. As well, I've presented at some of Canada's largest corporations, including IBM, Bosch, American Express, University of Toronto, Investors Group, and others. If you want to learn when I publish more videos on exercise, nutrition, and health, click like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. So first, let's give a definition. What is a fitness and health cult? There are 2 possible definitions. One is a strong belief in the absence of evidence. If there's an absence of evidence, you should be open to being wrong. You can have a weak belief, but you should have the attitude of, I'm open to changing my belief if the evidence contradicts that belief. The second definition is strong belief in the presence of evidence to the contrary. In other words, evidence is showing that your belief is incorrect, and yet you maintain that belief. Now, that's a cult. If that's not a cult, I don't know what is. So, what are the 3 cults? The first big cult is kettlebells. People in this cult believe that kettlebells are the golden panacea of fitness. Their argument is that kettlebells work the whole body. Now, here's the counter argument to that. Kettlebells are just an inanimate object. Equipment doesn't work the body. You work the body. Here's an easy example that disproves that. You can do curls with a kettlebell. Okay, that's not a full body workout. That is a biceps workout. It's not a bad thing for you. That's just a biceps workout. So why do people say that it works the whole body, even though there's tons of evidence to the contrary? They're thinking of kettlebell swings. They think a kettlebell swing works the whole body. Well, no, it doesn't even do that. A kettlebell swing works really one major muscle, and that's the glutes. And that's it. It doesn't work the shoulders, the back, the chest, doesn't really work the calves, doesn't work the quads very much. But yeah, just the glutes, maybe to a lesser extent, also the forearms. And why do they say it works the whole body when it doesn't? Because they don't know anatomy, and they're just parodying what some guru told them. And am I against kettlebell swings? No, they're just not intended to be a strength exercise. They're intended to be an endurance exercise. They are for your heart and lungs, not for any other muscle. And even though they work the glutes, there are much better glute exercises out there. Now, let's put kettlebells in the proper context. I'm not anti-kettlebells. I'm pro the proper use of kettlebells. Kettlebells are just a tool in the toolbox. There's no magical tools out there. They have some advantages over dumbbells, and they have some disadvantages over dumbbells. The characteristic is that their center of gravity is outside of the equipment itself. The center of gravity of a dumbbell is within the equipment itself. And so it's more practical to do swings with a kettlebell than with a dumbbell. And so again, no magic to kettlebells. They're just a piece of equipment, an inanimate object. The second big belief, which is largely a cult, is veganism. There's an old joke that how can you tell if someone is a vegan? Don't worry, they'll tell you. It usually comes right after they introduce themselves. Hi, my name is John Smith, and I'm a vegan. Here are the arguments that vegans often use to justify their beliefs. One is that veganism is healthier than being an omnivore. Usually, the reason they argue this is because they put up a strawman argument that says vegans eat a lot of vegetables, omnivores don't eat a lot of vegetables, omnivores eat McDonald's, etc. Okay, fair enough, but why are we pitting up the best version of something against the worst version of something? Why don't we compare vegans who eat lots of vegetables against omnivores who eat a lot of vegetables and also meat? Well, then the comparison isn't that favorable, but they need to make that comparison in order to make veganism look favorable. At the end of the day, you can be a healthy omnivore, it can be a healthy vegan. You can be an unhealthy omnivore and be also an unhealthy vegan. If you eat French fries and you drink pop, you're still vegan, but you're not exactly healthy. Okay, so let's compare the best versions of each other to the worst versions of each other. Here is another piece of vegan ideology. This is their Bible, the China Study. This is a book written by a PhD researcher named Colin Campbell. But he's not just a PhD researcher, he's a PhD researcher with an agenda. Every cult needs a cult leader. A good cult leader actually has legitimate credentials, and Colin Campbell is a legitimate PhD, but that doesn't mean he's correct, because the book, The China Study, is not the actual China Study. The actual China Study is something like a 17 or 1800-page manuscript about health practices and who's healthier between different populations in China. That study actually also found that smokers do better than non-smokers. But did that make it into the book, The China Study? No. And ever since the book itself was written back in 2005, legitimate researchers have been spending lots and lots of time, effort, and energy debunking the myths purported by this book. There is a very long, thorough rebuttal to the China Study, over 5,000 words, by a legitimate researcher named Denise Minger. She, by the way, is a vegan herself, and she's debunking the myths that the China Study spreads. Um, Here's a third argument of the vegans, and that is that bulls eat nothing but grass and they are full of muscle. Here is the thing. Let's not compare bulls to people, because bulls also have four stomachs, which allow them to extract more protein out of grass. And second of all, they don't just eat grass, they eat everything in the grass, and that includes insects and larvae, and they have plenty of protein. So this is a non-argument. Okay, let's look at the effects of veganism in people, not in bulls. So really, veganism is a moral choice. If you think it's more moral to avoid meat and meat-based products, cool, go ahead, do it. Um, but don't justify it with nutritional rationale. In Judaism and Islam, you can't have pork. And yet Jews and Muslims don't justify it with nutritional rationale. They don't say they avoid pork because it's nutritionally inferior. In Hinduism, you can't have beef, but they don't justify it by saying that beef is nutritionally inferior. Keep the moral choice if you think it's more moral, but don't justify it with nutritional rationale. Let's put veganism in the proper perspective. I'm not anti-vegan. I'm anti the cult of veganism. Can you be a healthy vegan? Yes, you absolutely can be, but it's more difficult. You have to spend more time and energy planning your meals as well as your supplements. Okay. Belief number 3. Here is our third cult, and that is intermittent fasting. Here are the arguments for it. One argument is that with less of a time to eat, there are lower insulin levels. And the question is, so what? Do lower insulin levels cause lower risk of all-cause mortality? Well, that's what this study wanted to find out. This study is titled Associations of Body Mass Index, Fasting Insulin, and Inflammation with Mortality, Prospective Cohort Study. And here's what the researchers did. They recruited 12,563 participants and measured their insulin levels to see what is the relationship between insulin levels and all-cause mortality, which is your risk of dying for any reason. And all the fasting insulin levels in this study were compared to a baseline of 18 picomoles per liter or 2.6 milli-IUs per liter. So when insulin levels were 54 picomoles per liter, the risk of early death was only 10% higher. 54 picomoles per liter is triple, almost triple what it looks like in this study. An insulin level of 87 picomoles per liter only creates a 20% higher chance of early death. At 175 picomoles per liter, so 10 times normal levels, there's still only a 51% higher chance of early death. And it only doubles at 295 picomoles per liter, which is almost like 17 or 16 times, not percent, 16, 17 times that of normal insulin levels. And so if somebody is a out of control diabetic, there will probably be a better health outcome if they are on an intermittent fasting diet. But if somebody's either a well-controlled diabetic or a non-diabetic or a pre-diabetic, it probably won't make much of a difference to your all-cause mortality whether you're intermittent fasting or not, as long as you're also exercising. But maybe all-cause mortality is not affected, but maybe fat loss is affected. Does insulin cause fat gain? Well, the answer is no, and the research is very robust on this. Here is a study titled No Effect of Inhibition of Insulin Secretion by Diazoxide on Weight Loss in Hyperinsulinemic Obese Subjects During an 8-Week Weight Loss Diet. If you're wondering what diazoxide is, stay tuned for a couple seconds. Here's what they did in the study. The researchers divided participants into 2 groups. Group number 1 was just put on a low-calorie diet. Group number 2 ate the same diet, but in addition to that, they were given the insulin-lowering drug diazoxide. Now, if the theory is true that high insulin causes fat gain, then in theory, there should be a greater fat loss in the group that received the insulin blocking drug. And was there? Well, after 8 weeks, there was no difference in weight loss between both groups. And the savvy viewer is thinking, well, weight loss isn't fat loss. Maybe they lost more fat. Well, that's not the case. They did not lose any more fat. And yes, this is just one study, but every study ever done on blocking insulin, as far as fat loss is concerned, doesn't find that there's much of a difference. Okay, it just lowers your insulin levels without causing any greater fat loss. Okay, the second argument of intermittent fasting is Dr. Jason Fong. Like I said earlier, every cult needs a cult leader. And a few of the criteria of a good cult leader is one, they have to have legitimate credentials. And Dr. Jason Fong does indeed have legitimate credentials. He is a nephrologist in Toronto. And by the way, this isn't against him personally. I don't know him personally. I don't think he knows me personally. But a lot of the things that he says are clearly wrong. The research strongly disagrees, and there's very little evidence to back up his theories. And I wrote an entire book, Busting the Myths of Intermittent Fasting, titled The Nobiest Guide to Intermittent Fasting for Women. The overall message of that book is that intermittent fasting is highly overrated. However, overrated does not mean useless. Overrated means that it's attributed a certain superiority that it doesn't actually have. It's given certain benefits that it doesn't have. And so the book looks at intermittent fasting for different goals, for fat loss, for muscle gain, for hypothyroidism, for PCOS, and for a bunch of other things. And it shows basically it's somewhere between no better and no worse, and sometimes a little bit worse than eating the same number of calories over a more spread out time frame. Let's put intermittent fasting in the proper perspective. It's not magic. It's just a tool in a toolbox, just like kettlebells. Intermittent fasting is a logistical choice, not a nutritional choice. If it helps you stick to your nutrition better, do it. If not, don't do it. Okay? All it does, if you lose body fat on intermittent fasting, it's not because of intermittent fasting, it's because you lowered your calories. If intermittent fasting helped you lower your calories, awesome. If intermittent fasting didn't help you lower your calories, you probably didn't lose body fat. There's no magic to it. Now, if you've been listening to this and you're wondering, I believe a lot of these things. I really like veganism, or I really like kettlebells, or I really like intermittent fasting. Let's test. Are you in a cult? Well, let me ask you. After watching this video, do you disagree with anything that I said, which is perfectly fine, but do you feel angry? If you disagree and you're not angry, you're probably not in a cult. If you disagree and you are angry, you're probably in a cult. If you feel like leaving a comment that is the size of War and Peace and it's very angry, etc., you might be in a cult. And if you do want to leave that long, angry comment, take these steps first. Step 1, take 3 deep breaths. Step 2, write your comment in a Word document or a Google Doc. Step 3, wait until tomorrow. And if you still think that it's a good idea to post your comment, go ahead. I'm very happy to be wrong. I'm very happy to read intelligent, thoughtful arguments. Okay. Now, if you want to dive way deeper into intermittent fasting, the myths around it, as well as how it applies to things like for women over 50, for menopause, for hypothyroidism, and more, I have an entire playlist on that. You can either click on the playlist on your screen right now or click on it in the description below.